Sounds like she's. I thought it would be perfect. You know, but.
So we're gonna hit a lot.
Good afternoon, and welcome everyone here for our Thursday, June 26th, 2025 Roanoke Valley-Alleghany Regional Commission's Transportation Planning Organization. At this time, I would like to ask Jeremy Holmes, our Executive Director, to please take attendance as we go out around the room and introduce ourselves. I'm Phil North, Roanoke County.
I'm Renee Turk, City of Salem Mayor.
David Radford, Roanoke County.
I'm Phil North, Roanoke County.
No, you're not.
Like Snowball Town.
Peter Boston, City of Roanoke. Cody Sexton, Town of Benton, and Chair of the TTC.
Ken King, VDOT.
Megan Furnish, Roanoke County staff.
Brooke Jackson, with the Office of Intermodal Planning and Investment.
Brittany Day, Deputy Director, Office of Intermodal Planning and Investment.
Mike Stewart, Blacksburg Airport.
Steve Fidzikowski, Montgomery County.
And those around the room, starting on my left.
Chris Robertson, CPI.
Barbara Dirk, Connect Now.
Ross Campbell, Director of Public Works, City of Roanoke. Wayne Darden, Transportation Division, City of Roanoke.
Andrea Garland, I
Matthew Lindsay, Planner of Roanoke County.
Ray Smoot, CTV. Michael Gray, VDOT planning.
Board, you got him saying.
Will King, Roanoke County Planning and Economic Development Intern.
Summer Board, Roanoke County staff.
Allison Smith, Regional Commission.
Jessica Heron, Public Engagement Manager.
Amaya Matthews, Regional Commission.
Thank you.
Or Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Jeremy. Now we move on to item 3 on our agenda, approval of consent agenda items. Item A, approval of the agenda. Item B, action on June 26, 2025. That's not.
It should be the main, action on the main minutes.
On the May meeting minutes. Item C, amendments to the RVTPO 26 Unified Planning Work Program and approval of resolution found on pages 18 through 19 of your packet. With that said, do I have a motion to approve consent agenda items?
So moved.
Second.
I think we should say so moved with the
We have,
correction of the date
yes,
for 3B.
what was the date?
Oh, yes, May 22nd.
20,
May 22nd.
22nd.
okay. Item B stands corrected at May 22nd. Do I have approval of the consent agenda items as they stand corrected?
So moved now.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Item 3 stands approved. Remarks from the chair. Today, the Blue Ridge Rising Two-State Summit is taking place from July 8th through July 10th at the Hotel Roanoke. Blue Ridge Rising is a strategic plan recently adopted by the Blue Ridge Parkway Foundation to better support and capitalize on the economic development opportunities generated by the Blue Ridge Parkway, the most visited national park in America. The Two-State Summit is an opportunity to join other local and regional leaders to discover new ideas, hear updates, and discuss next steps to benefit the 29-county Blue Ridge Rising region. While the Parkway does not fall within the immediate purview of the RVTPO, it is nonetheless an important piece of transportation infrastructure that serves the region. Participating in the summit would be a good opportunity to learn how we can better advocate for and make investments in this scenic byway that is the most visited national park in the United States. This September, the RVTPO Policy Board will need to vote for officers for the chair and vice chair positions. I would like to form a nominating committee to consider candidates for the positions and make a recommendation to the RVTPO in the fall. The following policy board members have asked to serve on the nominating committee. They've been asked to serve: Mayor Turk, City of Salem; Peter Bolison, City of Roanoke; David Radford, Roanoke County; Mike Snowball, Town of Benton; Steve Fajikowski, Montgomery County; and Brandon Nicely of Botetourt County. If you are interested in being considered for the chair or vice chair, please contact a member of the nominating committee to express your interest. Finally, the July meeting of the RVTPO Policy Board will be canceled for the summer break. This time, we're going to move on to our item 5 on the agenda. Before we do, I have some comments. I want to thank Ronique, Brooke, and Dr. Smoot for coming today from out of town. Appreciate the drive over here in this unusually hot weather, and we are glad you could be here in person with us today. But first, I just want to set the table for the rest of the folks here that round 6 projects total 270 submissions for consideration by the by VDOT and the CTV, and only 53 projects were funded statewide. Of those 53, only 3 were funded and approved in the Salem district. None were in the boundary of our TPO. We have noted in past award reviews some changes made in round 6 that we all agreed to for this round to see how they would plan out. Land use, safety, congestion, all were debated. Input received did not fare well for the TPO projects that were submitted. That said, we have some questions today, and we look forward to those questions that were submitted by the area governments through the TPO to our folks at the OIPI. And at this time, before we get started with the program, and I think there's Deputy Secretary of Transportation is online from the Department of Transportation in Richmond. Mr. John Lawson, are you with us? John?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. How are you, Mr. Chairman?
I'm fine, thank you, and appreciate you being here.
Yeah, sorry I couldn't make the trip today. I had other things to deal with this today. Well, I haven't been out of the office the last couple of days, but I really wanted to just say a couple comments before Brooke and Monique get started. They're the brains of the operation anyway, so you won't miss me. I just really wanted to just share my appreciation to you and the members for your interest and your engagement with SmartScale. It is a tool that was developed some years ago to try to get the politics out of project selection and help make sure the board is funding the projects that provide the greatest investment, value for the investment in the Commonwealth. And the tool's not perfect. It never will be perfect, but we always continue to look at how to improve it. And discussions like this and input from people like yourself is what helps us make it a better product. So thank you again. And unless you have any questions for me, I'm going to turn it over to Brooke and Ronique.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to introduce Brooke Jackson from the OIPI in Richmond, as well as Ronique Day, who's here with us today. And Dr. Smoot, as always, we appreciate your presence today as well. And we look forward to hearing from you. Up on the screen right now, before we get started, previous slide was all the projects that were submitted in our Salem district in the TPO area and their scores. So, and I think that was just part of the packet that went out as well.
This was not in the packet that went out.
And so if we have any discussions about any projects, this is the list we can refer back to during the course of the meeting. Thank you and welcome.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I'm Brooke Jackson. I am the SmartScale Program Manager at the Office of Intermodal Planning and Investment. I've been in this role for the past 5 years, almost 4.5 years. But before I get started, did you want to say anything? Are you good? You're good? Okay, I'll just get into it. So basically, the format of my presentation was I did receive all of your questions. I really appreciate all the interest and the questions that I got. I tried to integrate most of them into this presentation. My goal here is to give you a little bit of an overview of how the round went, and then an overview of how we support and the overview of the support that's available to you, because I want you to be successful in smart scale too. And you'll hear some statistics to me that, might seem negative, but I'm gonna balance that with how you can do better. And the goal here is to actually work to get better at the process. And I'm actually really proud of the improvements that were made. We are truly getting back to the roots of performance-based planning with these changes that were made for round 6. And what does that mean? Where there are problems, where there are safety, congestion, where there are economic development needs, where there are needs, we're addressing needs that are out there with planning that is performance-based and it's efficient, and trying to find right-sized solutions for problems and cost-effective solutions for problems is really important. And that's something our office specializes in. We have the pipeline program, we have retrans, which attender. We're going to talk a little bit about all of those today as well. And then we kind of wrap it up with performance measures. Margie leads that too. So these are all things that we're really passionate about in our office, and we want to make sure you have all the tools you need to be successful. And then if we have time at the end, we'll talk a little bit about some of these in detail questions. Anything I don't cover of what I got from y'all, we'll follow up with an email, a written response, if we don't have time to discuss it today. So that's my game plan. Please do ask questions. I'm fine with you interrupting. I only have about 25 slides, so it shouldn't take me too long to get through this, and we should have a little time on there. All right. So I'm gonna breeze through the first slides. Actually, this week we finished and put a wrapping bow on round 6. The CTV adopted the round 6 projects on Tuesday. And so I did update this slide here to reflect, we did end up in our staff recommended scenario having 53 projects, and then we adopted 53 projects at the end, but we did end up allocating a little bit more funding. Another 0.1 or 100 million was allocated. And I think we talked about this a little bit, but this is more just for reference. And in the January presentation, I brought this to the board. This again is for reference, but this is showing you what DGP is available amongst the state. Salem this round had $64 million of DGP available. And keep that in mind as we're going through the presentation. If there's a DGP project that's only eligible for DGP, and of course, you're not going to know what the number is and what's available until we get there, but those are kind of the limits of what we can even apply for, because that's how much is available. And then we had 384 available this year. If you want to know more about how we came to these dollars, there was a big presentation made by Laura Farmer, and I linked that here. And I think all of this can be made digitally available. This is a summary of where we ended up on our adoption. This is what projects were adopted by district across the state and how we got to that 1 billion number across the state and how many projects were allocated. Like mentioned before, there are 3 projects totaling almost $54 million in the Salem district this round. I mean, there will be more questions around that, and we'll get into it, I promise. I'm just getting through some of the weeds of the details first. So here is the scenario for the whole entire district. I know you had up on the slide ones that were in the area. There were 34 projects applied for in the Salem district. And so when I'm looking at this, and if I'm looking at this from an after action perspective, I'm going to want to see where were my higher benefit projects and where can I hone in on being more efficient on those really high benefit projects. So a really good example to talk about would be like the Dow Holland Road intersection improvement. The benefit was 13.3. There's a lot of room there to actually get lean and be a little bit more efficient with either bringing dollars to the table, which it looks like 4 million was brought to this project. And it's very close to that funding line. I think the lowest project that we funded from an HPP perspective was like a 3.4. But that would be one that I really want to sharpen my pencil on, see if I could tighten up that project scope to get it in a place where it would be even more competitive next round. And then anything that has, above a 4 or a 5 from a benefit perspective, I would want to go back and look and see if we can work on sharpening our pencils on those projects. And you can do that through the pipeline process. That's something that Chad is really motivated on this round, and he's the program manager for pipeline, is working with applicants on projects that weren't successful, but were really good benefits. That means there's problems there, and maybe there's a more efficient way to solve those problems. So focusing on where we can hone in on improvements for those problems. So there is a lot of question around, Salem getting 3 projects and what's going on here. And this is the part where I'm showing you where I uncover some of the things that I found in digging in the detail. So Salem District, on the whole, is requesting the near highest amount per project, only second to Northern Virginia. But the benefit scores are the near lowest benefit, only second to Bristol. Now, what that tells me is that there's things that we can do to improve. So you have room to tighten up your budgets, to work on your cost estimate. And where you're performing the best, and I think everyone is aware of this, is in that safety category. And do you focus in a little bit more on some of these safety ones? So I broke up by benefit type all across the state where your percent of score is. Now, that doesn't mean necessarily that you only have safety projects available. I don't believe that at all. You have prioritized needs, and we're gonna go over prioritized needs, and there is definitely congestion, high congestion areas that could be focused on, and you could capture congestion benefits as well. But that seems to be where everyone is focusing in the Salem, is putting in safety projects, and maybe that isn't the only place that you can focus. You can also focus in the economic development area, and we'll talk a little bit about how we get to our economic development scores. Accessibility, if you improve those congestion scores or hone in where there's congestion problems, you're automatically gonna see a boost in accessibility, because accessibility is essentially a factor in congestion. So HPP specifically, so I want to talk about that a little bit. In the Salem district, out of the 34 projects, only 5 were eligible for HPP. That's the lowest percentage in the state. So that's 15% of your projects were eligible. So just by the sheer number, you're only applying for 5 projects that were eligible for HPP. The average cost of an HPP project in the Salem district was $63 million. Requesting that amount of money with the amount that was available, there was 384 available, so we have to keep that in mind when we're right-sizing solutions to it. But I think one of the core things is getting up your applications that are eligible for HPP. Like, for instance, Northern Virginia and Richmond are submitting over 50% of their applications are eligible for HPP. Hampton Roads, similar, 42%. And you are the lowest number percentage-wise in the state of how many apps are even eligible to. So my first recommendation to you would be to submit more that are eligible for HPP. And we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail of how you can be eligible for HPP. And there might be some misconceptions and misnomers there. But I'll also, just to make sure we have a little bit of a baseline understanding, I'm gonna go through just a couple things about Smart Scale too, before we get into more of the weeds. But as you guys know, Smart Scale process is in the Virginia Code, is forced out a benefit cost relationship, and that is our Smart Scale score. It is your benefit divided by your cost for $10 million. We have 6 factor areas. It is a multimodal project evaluation, and so we consider highway, transit, rail, bike ahead, TDM strategies in the same scoring scenarios as we do with highway. You have to meet a V-Trans need. Any midterm need you can meet, but we're going to talk about how you shouldn't just focus on any midterm need. You should focus on V-Trans prioritized needs. And then we are required to fully fund these when they're added to the SIM. And you do not need to bring money to the table. That is the other unique thing about Smart Scale, which I'm sure you all understand and know, that is one of the benefits. But we do give credit in terms of the Smart Scale request is reduced by your leverage that is brought to the table. The next image is showing our 6 factor area weightings and what they mean, and where we are actually weighting every factor at this time. And for your reference, I did put in here the difference between round 5 and round 6. And you have 3 area types in the Salem district. You have area type B, and C, and D. So majority D in your rural areas, and that's all a boost in safety. And I think that's one of the big reasons that you all have so much of the benefit in your area coming from safety, is it is sitting at 40% now. But this is here for you. And the next part is, after we get the Smart Scale score, and that again is your benefit divided by your cost, it goes through our funding steps. And this also was a change. Before we had 3 steps, and now we've simplified it to 2 steps. solely based on your smart scale score. And the first step is sorting by the district, and you have to be eligible for DGP. What does that mean? You have to be in a locality to be eligible for DGP. Localities can also be eligible for HPP, but you do have to be a locality to be eligible for DGP. And we sort by your smart scale score just within the district and fund until you cannot fully fund the next project in line. And then step two, we resort anything that was eligible for HPP in DGP, and then HPP only projects like MPO, TPO, and transit agencies and organizations. They are sorted statewide, and then ranked and funded until you cannot fund the next project. So resources that we have available for you. Every round, we provide scorecards. These are one of the best resources you're going to use when you're working and planning towards picking projects for the next round. You have your description of the project, you have what fund program that it was eligible for, the smart scale cost and the benefit, and then you also have where it ranked. So you're going to know which ones you want to focus on honing in on better improvements for the next round if you can. And then you can also look at your competition. And I would also recommend using our spreadsheets that we have in the resources section of the Smart Scale website. And then you can actually do some data analysis when you're looking across the statewide, because the first thing, I do want to really quick hit on something. If you're going to download the data that looks like this just from our website, because this I just got right off of our website, I would sort by the benefits statewide and see what your competition is, that benefit is there that it wasn't funded. So what are other really high benefit projects that were there from a competition perspective, and see how you're going to stack up against them in the next round in terms of cost and benefit. But in the scorecard, this is the bottom half of the scorecard. It tells you what area type this is. So area type B, that's going to be more of a suburban area where you're balanced on all areas of your factor and measure weighting. And then it gives you the actual measure value, which is our pure measure value. And one thing that we do every round when we see a resubmit of a project or a similar project in a similar area, the first thing we're going to do is data check the difference between the scores and make sure that they make sense between the previous year. And those measure scores are our base scores for every single category. Then once we get our measure score, we normalize each measure. We normalize each individual measure by, again, the entire state. So this number could drastically change from year to year. I think that's really important for folks to understand. This probably won't drastically change if you go from year to year, but this number will, because you never know what the competition is going to be. The highest scoring project from a benefit perspective this round was the shortcut project in Richmond on US 250. So a lot of those numbers are normalized off of those values. If you were wanting to look and see how you were compared to that when you're reviewing this. And lastly, we made some adjustments this round. You can see in here, the economic development score is here. And we have our new application of the way we apply land use. And that is using it as a multiplier this round. So I want to make sure you have every tool that you need in your toolbox as you're moving forward. We have a lot of support available, and making sure that you're utilizing everything that's available to you. This district staff that's in here right now. We have Ken, we have Michael, we have everyone from the state here to help and support you. And previous staff, scores, consultants, I think we don't utilize consultants as well as we should. A lot of the consultants that you hire to work on your studies are also working for us scoring, are also working for us doing cost estimate validation. They're also working, helping us develop new measures. We're not coordinating with them in that way, but I don't think that it's utilized in the way that it should, that it's the same folks preparing these things that are the same people that are working in the process in the statewide perspective. We have tons of data on the Smart Scale website. Under our resources tab in the previous round data, lots of information. I know it can be analysis paralysis by how much we have. I get that. If you need help narrowing down, definitely reach out to your smart scale POCs is what we like to call, our district staff and planning. But everything that's on there, including the technical guide, is kept up to date every round in the apply and resources section. So mostly Control F on technical guide will give you an answer to anything that you're wondering or questioning. And obviously your resources are here, but there is a lot available. We do a lot of town hall and TTB meetings. I know within the review that we did in 2023, I was in front of the board monthly. So being present or reviewing the videos as much as you can in a timely fashion will help you have those comments sooner rather than later. And then we also offer 2 sets to 3 sets of trainings for applicants every round. We offer pre-application training, we offer application training. I also offer office hours. So I put out for applicants to reach out to us if they want to have a 15 to 20-minute call, and we put those office hours out for applicants. And then we also keep the MPOs updated at the quarterly MPO meeting. And so there is another one coming up shortly. It's July 17th. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we go on too. First question I want to ask everyone is, have you used Interact V-Trans? Hands up if you have. Oh, less than I want it. Oh. Okay, so Interact V-Trans is going to be your best friend after this. Interact V-Trans, and the second thing that I'm going to tell you is P4P. That is v.p4p.com. And that is a repository for all the data that we use for scoring. We say we're transparent, we actually put our data out there that we use for scoring. Very similar data, if not exact, is used to build the V-Trans needs. V-Trans prioritized needs are prioritizing the top 5%, 1%, 15%, and 20% of projects that are locations that are the worst in the state. And so Jatinder, the program manager for V-Trans, he is prioritizing those for you to say, this is where performance will be the best. This is where you're going to get the best results when you look at the data. You cannot get a smart scale score if you do not have a problem. It's a change in a bad condition to a better condition is how you get a smart scale score. So you cannot have no issue that you're solving or that is tracked as a no issue. And trust me, I know there's a lot of anecdotal data. Near miss crashes that you hear from your constituents. There's a lot of near miss crashes. That's not tracked in our system. So we have to use the things that we do track and be smarter about where we're taking our priority locations and our prioritized places where we're planning studies. So v.p4p, I'm gonna talk about that for a second. Again, TMPD managed repository site, you can get an account, you just need to log onto that website, request it immediately. All the crash data is in there. We've got our V over speed data, which tells you if a road is oversaturated or over capacity. You cannot get a C1 score without a road being over capacity. These are some basic things that you need to be able to understand if you would get a score, yes or no. And using that data will help give you that information. The other thing that we use a lot is Virginia roads. I also like that better for crash data. While you can get data at P4P, from a crash perspective, I like using Virginia roads better for filtering. The on the census map is also really helpful for understanding where your population densities are, where you're going to get good land use scores, where you're going to see higher accessibility scores. That's going to help you with that. And some of our calculations, there's other factors that are in there as well. The EDP's website, absolutely utilize that. The economic development scoring process now is based on sites, EDP sites. I'm going to show you how to actually see if you have a site near your project. And then there's also more screening tools that help you decide. So the V.Junction screening tool, that will make, you can load in different options, a roundabout, a signal improvement, a four-way stop, a three-way stop, and it'll rank what's going to give you that best outcome from a high-level planning outcome on a congestion scoring. So there's tons of things. We are so data rich. Every time I talk to another state about wanting to start a smart scale process, there's just no competition on how much data we have and how strong our data sources are. it's so hard to set up a process like this unless you truly have all of these things in place. And so that's why we're able to do this, is because we have it available and accessible. So another interesting thing is to make sure that you're using your other regional organizations as resources. Central Virginia Transportation Authority and the Stanton Augusta Williamsboro MPO, they both have smart scale like prioritization systems that they use for the CLRP. I linked in here their technical guides. And because out of the 14 HPP projects, there were 11 that came from just these two organizations in their area. And they're doing their smart scale organization and prioritization of their projects ahead of even applying for smart scale. And I think there's a lot to learn by their processes. I didn't help them set it up. Nobody from our office did. They took it upon themselves to set these up. And I think they're learning how to adapt to the game because they're planning for the game. And that's kind of being proven in this round. And they're using performance-based planning as they're going through the process. So take some time to either work with them or review their material. And I think that will help too. Okay, so I'm gonna switch topics to performance-based planning. So I talked a little bit about V-Trans. V-Trans prioritize needs. The benefits for is the project's impact to the needs and problems. And the needs and problems are identified in V-Trans. Very critical that you're using the V-Trans map. Then we need to identify the right solutions to needs. Value engineering. Project pipeline stars are one of the most common ways to do that. Are one of the most common ways, but you can also use the stars and pipeline practices. Again, same consultants. There's 6 consultants, 10 consultants that do stars and pipeline. You can engage with them to do a very similar process. They're all the same consultants doing the same kind of work. And then cost effectiveness is the next thing. Like I said, any midterms need is acceptable. But priority 1 and 2 locations established in V-Trans become eligible for the pipeline program. So when we set up the pipeline program, we knew that the ones that were going to be the most successful was going to be the priority 1 and 2 location. So you have to get special approval if you're not on a priority 1 or 2 location to do a pipeline study. It needs to be a special request through the CTE member. And like I said, it is the top 15% that we're identifying where the worst needs in the states are. And it is a very interactive map, very easy for you to use when you're using it. This is what it looks like when you get into the V-Trans prioritized needs. You can sort it. I have here the construction district priority, excuse me. I have it sorted by that, and the legend is shown there. The red and the darker colors, like orange and red, are your priority 1 and 2 locations. This is where you really want to sharpen your pencil and submit projects. This is where the success is. Priority 1 is the highest need, and that is red. 43 out of 53 of all funded states have a priority 1 or 2 location construction district priority. 14 out of 14 of HPP projects were on a priority 1 or 2 need. So there's no question that it's based in performance. And we're able to see that data and see how we're doing overall and where you need to spend your time when you're preparing application and focusing on sharpening your pencil. Now, it doesn't guarantee that you're going to get funded if you're on a priority 1 location, unfortunately. You have to loop in the 2 other things: value-based engineering, cost effectiveness. So digging into this a little bit more. Saying that you're not guaranteed just because you're on a priority 1. So unfortunately, Salem here had 5 that met that priority 1 category, but 0 were funded. And I'm like scratching my head on that one. What's going on? So I dug in a little bit deeper here. These 5 projects, we're requesting $65 million. And I know you're going to hear that that's a similar number to that 63 million of how much your average was. But on average, each one of those projects cost $65 million. And then Richmond, Hampton Roads, and Stanton average for a request for a priority 1 district was $25 million. So, we're talking almost 2.5 times, 3 times the cost request. So they're being a little more efficient with their priority one locations and what they're asking for. And that's one of the reasons where I don't think the success is being seen in that priority one spot. You're having a little bit more success in the priority two, but your two projects are actually not in the priority two. And that is because there were safety projects that were cost effective.
So, just, me to ask a question.
Like,
So just out of curiosity, does that mean that, their priority one projects actually cost less as a whole, or are they finding other sources of funding
they cost.
to reduce one? Okay. I don't know how you control.
Folks on home were not efficient with leveraging this round. I have a slide on that. So they're providing projects that are in that $15 to $35 million range that are addressing priority one B. So whether that be they're doing more of a corridor management system, that they're doing more of a super study instead of actually widening the road, that would be an example of something that is more cost efficient. But they are applying for lower cost projects addressing these higher needs.
That's kind of a question. So what I'm hearing you say is break down a corridor's projects. Don't put the whole corridor in,
No,
okay? We did that on Peters Creek, but we also submitted two smaller projects on Peters Creek. And they were $38 million, one of them was, and the other one I think was 27. And we didn't score well on those neither. I understand they were higher than the average in the other transportation districts that was 25, but in other words, we did it both ways and we didn't fare too well. And I'm speaking about Peters Creek
yeah,
multimodal safety improvements and Peters Creek at the Williamson Road improvements. The whole corridor was 148 million. And obviously we didn't get that because the score is 0.95. But to your point, what could we do better along those corridors improvements? Where the price tag was 38, do we ask for smaller territory to start with?
so I'm looking at those projects broken up right now. I don't see a request less than 38 million.
Right.
When you're even breaking it up.
Right.
So what it would tell me is that you probably need to go back and look at a midterm solution than a long-term solution for that corridor. I don't want to equate this to say that I think corridors should be broken up. I'm talking about reevaluating your solutions for those corridors.
Okay.
Are those solutions the right solution? Now, and this is something that I'm talking about with Chad, the program manager, nothing that, so, but like, maybe he knows the policy, like we're working together. He's trying to identify the right length of pipeline studies. When he gets asked to do pipeline studies or they're identifying pipeline studies, 9 times out of 10, he's being begged to expand the study longer and not be efficient with it. So when we're talking about length of corridor, we're being very mindful of that now moving forward. Now, the other thing is rehoning the solution. What design waivers, design exceptions can you incorporate into your solution? What can you trim off the right of way? When I see something that's $150 million for less than 2 miles or 1.5 miles, I'm thinking that's got to be right of way, that's got to be utilities, that's got to be, you know, what is causing that to be $148 million? That doesn't seem right to me. What can you incorporate in it? I don't know much about it. I looked into these projects a little bit, but there is room to sharpen a pencil when I see big benefit scores and high costs. So this is where working with your planning partners, and maybe you can engage also paying Chad, not to put work on Chad, sorry, but you know, to see if that could be relooked at, because I'm assuming that was a pipeline study, is that correct?
That's right.
Yes. And so re-engaging and refining where you started.
I think the problem with that one too is that the boundaries of that study were clear before the changes were made within the project, so it's already long. And then we learned we had to submit, the TPO was gonna submit, it had to be the whole study. Yes. So I think we asked you in a virtual meeting, like, really, we have to do that? And you said, yeah, and that's why we did. And it was just too big. And then the smaller pieces also ended up paying too big, even though we tried to make them lean and mean. The estimates just still got really high because of utilities spent not a ton of right of way, just they're important projects dealing with a lot of issues at these intersections.
Absolutely. Yeah. And at some point, there are certain confines within just the funding structure. I mean, there was 63 million available in Salem or 65 million, you know, and there's only 300 and change available in HPP. So asking for 148 million, and granted, he didn't know it was gonna be 380 million as the HPP. He didn't, I was shocked. But it is what's expected to be moving forward. So it's like when you're asking for a third of the pot, it has to be a third of the most important thing in the state. So we really need to think about what's possible and where you want to spend your time. Like, I don't want you wasting your time either, just as much as you don't want to. And so just thinking about like right sizing where it could fall in the funding category and taking some time to look at your competition in terms of where the biggest needs are in the state and seeing if that dollar amount fits into it logically. You know, what can we do for $35 million and really make that your bar for a little bit? You could still submit $100 million project, but let's be a little more realistic about what's possible within the constraints. So I do want to add on a little bit more to this submitting the whole study. So out of pipeline and STAR study, 50% of them already have an HPP eligible feature. So we need to get that straight first. You can meet an HPP eligible feature on an application, and most of these studies have that. And so as long as you include an HPP eligible feature, like adding a shared through right lane, that's giving you a through lane, or adding some level of capacity in terms of even transit. So if you can partner with your transit providers and add in a new transit route, that would be eligible for HPP without considering the whole study. I think when we have this discussion, we leave out that part. That's the first step. You can meet the HPP eligible features. If you do not have that, you can provide the preferred alternative of approved study as another option that we have provided. And there might be some overlap of, like you said, coming in, the policy coming in a little bit after we started the pipeline study. But that being said, I highly encourage the localities to break up and find the pieces that are the most impactful pieces out of the prioritized location that could be submitted and they're eligible to. Another strategy that I see in the Richmond region is they give, say you're Hanover County, and they work with their MPO and their PBCs, and they all get a couple slots. They say, we're gonna give our localities 3 slots each, Hanover and Rico, Richmond. Hanover is gonna give the MPO to have their slots as their HPP eligible features. You know, they're gonna, even if it's a $10 million project or a $15 million project, they're gonna give those projects to the MPO right off the bat and then focus on all of the other stuff. Their goal is to get projects funded. And that's not necessarily the right way to do it, but that is one way that I see that success is happening, is that they're giving those style of projects that have certain features that meet the criteria to the MPOs to submit on their behalf as part of a bigger goal in their region. And their goal in their region is to get as many projects that are identified by CBTA funded. And so being a little bit more particular about those kind of details do help the process overall and success.
So Brooke, just to highlight what you just said, in the Richmond area, they know they've got so many, they're limited, everybody's limited in the number of HPP applications they can make from a regional planning entity or a planning entity. And they know they're gonna submit all of them. And everybody is somewhat clamoring to get a hold of those available slots. And so that's where they're doling out to each locality a certain number, because they're gonna maximize. I will say that in the Salem district, I don't think that we've had a round yet that maximize all of our MPOs and regional planning agencies available submissions. So we're, you know, you're not gonna make as many shots if you don't shoot the ball that often, right? So the more you shoot, the more buckets you're gonna probably make, even if your percentage. When Richmond, they submitted how many total for the HPP? It was like it was their maximum amount. I don't think it was like it was way higher
I
than
mean,
any
they
other.
submitted, 65 and 28 for HPP eligible.
Yeah.
So they submitted 65 applications, 28 for HPP eligible.
Among the highest of the districts within the state. So that's just a really important point. I was just trying to highlight what you said and mean to interrupt you, but I just wanted to draw attention to that because, you know, if you only take a couple of shots, you've either got to be really, really precise or you're not going to make as many as somebody that took 3 times the shots that you did, right? And that's part of what our challenge.
You should be more precise by picking prioritized locations.
Right.
But, and just to further emphasize that point, there was 5 projects that were HPP eligible in the San Juan district. So if you can get that number up and taking more shots on those priority locations, that's where you're gonna see more success. Absolutely. So a little bit about cost effectiveness and cost estimate. What some of the things, this isn't necessarily my expertise area. I did used to be in consulting, but cost effectiveness is really important in the process. If you don't have dollars to leverage, being lean as possible is the best. And some way that you can do that, if you are doing your PE on your own or you're doing that early, that counts as credit towards your project. As you're further along in the process, there's less contingency and risk. And so if you're further along in your study, then there's going to be less risk for VDOT. Working with VDOT early and often, I know Anthony is a pro at that. So he does that with a lot of you all anyways. But the most communication you can do with them about what your intent is for projects early so that they can work together on the cost estimate. I find that those partnership estimates have a lot less contingency and risk when it comes down to the final estimate. Yes.
Just using Richmond as a benchmark for the number of shots taken, how many of those had their PERs done beforehand that were successful in the system? That
Had their
100%?
PE done?
Yeah.
I don't know that number off the top of my head. I can respond with that, but a huge amount of theirs were resubmits this round. So I think that also helps because it's already been vetted by VDOT. So it doesn't guarantee that, you know, it's gonna stay within 10% of the round before or 20%. But a resubmit is also gonna be a reason that they're gonna have more confidence in it because they've reviewed it before. I'll have to get back to you. I don't know that percentage, but a lot are pipeline, a lot are STAR studies. And they're utilizing, Richmond is unique because they had an influx of CBTA dollars. And they can use it in a way that Nova and Hampton Roads can't. That's just a fact. They're not being limited. Nova has to use their tax dollars towards WMATA. And Hampton Roads is sucking it up in the HRVT. And they're using their dollars to study early, move forward with things that they want to move forward with as early as possible. We're not preferring them. We're not giving them preference, but they have that time to that money to take off and get to this part before asking for money. And that's what my advice would be, is that if there was one project and if Peters Creek is that project for you all, that Peters Creek has to be the thing you have to push into. If that is the number one thing for the TPO. And so pick things that are the most important and then start pushing into them on your own for a while and you can keep applying. But the further you can keep getting it ready and moving along and inching that instead of inching 7 projects, then the better success you'll have with that. Okay, so cost effectiveness. We talked about that a little bit, about applicants and their leverage amount of dollars. So one thing we saw when we looked into the data was this was the least efficient round for leveraging. That's like the worst thing you want to see. We want to have efficiency with leveraging. We want to see partners bringing money to the table and then being successful with that money that they're bringing down to the table. So anytime we saw someone bringing leverage, no matter what the dollar was, their average request went way up. So essentially what that means is they weren't putting $2 million on a $10 million project. They're putting $2 million on a $40 million project. And so all that really matters when it comes down to the score is smart scale requests. So it doesn't help a project to leverage in terms of effectiveness if you're not bringing that project into the realm of what the average request was. And again, I think the average request, I had it at somewhere, I think it's $20 million total. Overall, the average request was $30 million and the average successful application was $20 million. So thinking about those things and where you put your money is, are we actually buying down the smart scale request is the most important thing. And we're seeing that the only district that actually bought down their request was Richmond District. Every other district, if they had leverage dollars on the project, the request overall was much higher than the average. So what are my key takeaways? Spend your time on the V-Trans website on priority 1 and 2 locations. Value engineer solutions to those locations. Partnership with VDOT, partnership with your consultants and your cost estimate preparation. Ask who's doing the cost estimate review at VDOT. You know, make sure you're using some of the similar folks. We're all paying consultants here. Make sure you're using your resources when you're working towards your cost estimate. And it's not the percent you leverage, it's what amount is requested in your request versus benefit. And I do want to take a moment to acknowledge and not be naive about the fact that performance-based planning is always going to be overlooked because there's political reasons to submit projects. But I don't want those political reasons to get into the I don't understand why I'm not getting funded reason. I want you to understand where your best success is and where it could be, and put these political reasons aside. You know, I know that every local board has their own districts that they want to see one project in every district, even if there isn't a need there. There's also pressures to apply for the maximum cap limit, which doesn't sound like that's an issue here as much. Complaints about perceived issues, near misses, things that aren't being tracked from a data perspective, but there's no supporting historical data. And then very often we see this, that the solutions have already been determined and their value engineering hasn't been considered. You know, we're already deciding we're going to the Cloverleaf interchange instead of considering a diverging guided interchange. So that's pretty much my presentation. I do have a couple slides, one on economic development and one on the bike ped question that I got from Mr. North. If you guys want me to cover economic development, I'm happy to do so.
Sure.
That
Go right
helpful?
ahead. That's fine.
Any questions first before I go into this? Because I think that's a good stopping point.
Yeah, I've got a quick question. So earlier in the presentation, you shared a lot of really useful tools for trying to approximate some of the scoring rubric for smart scale. And then additionally shared, we have a number of PDCs that are building their own approximation models, which we've started here. But I guess my question is, why wouldn't OIP just provide us a tool instead of having 21 PDCs kind of independently try to recreate the tool? Why is it there some central tool that we could try to use to try and approximate our scoring, that we would have some confidence that it would be approximating smart scale scoring?
Good question.
So I've thought a little bit about this. I think politically, that's a bad place for us to be, to tell you what to apply for beyond giving you the tools to do it. We have talked about integrating something into P4P that is basically just a check mark, like, would you get a score, yes or no, in this category kind of thing, so you can rank. But then it gets into, well, tell me how much I should leverage. Tell me where I should apply, can I apply for this versus this? And then if it's not successful, we've given you an opinion on it. So
Yeah, I guess I would.
politically, it's difficult, but it could be, yes. And if I could, so could anyone else. And that's kind of where I led the line. I don't know if you want to add anything for me to that.
No, I think the only thing additional that I would add is that obviously with any tool, we have to consider the ongoing cost and maintenance of that tool. And so in lieu of having a tool, the best thing right now that we can provide are resources to point you all to help figure out where to focus applications. And from what we're seeing in the analysis that we've done, really where the best bang for your buck is a V-Trans priority 1 and 2 location. If you start there, go there, and if V-Trans Interact is something you're not familiar with, it's something that you tender, you can reach out to any of us on our team, can help you with. It literally is a click of a button and immediately it will light up and show you where those locations are. If you just focus on those areas, and I know that Peters Creek location, I don't know if it's a priority 1 or 2 location.
It has a couple priority 1 and 2.
So that's really where we're seeing how you can maximize opportunity without anyone even putting any additional resources into it, because we're always gonna have resources and everyone doesn't have the extra to really spend on building a tool. It can be very costly and we would have to do it for the entire state.
I would just say that there's 21 PDCs that are doing the same thing, right?
Oh, wow.
Well, I guess that's what we're all trying to do, right? Like, everybody wants to see within their district how these scores are gonna match up. I mean, even, it would be a great tool even internally for us within our group to be looking at projects
Sure.
to say, these are the ones that are gonna score well within the system, and how can we sharpen this pencil to make it fit better?
Sure. It's something that we definitely can take back and can discuss internally and see if there is a possibility. But just where we are right now, if you all focus on those priority 1 and 2 locations, you're already going in the right direction.
Yeah, this has been very, very insightful. And I think this is the time to take a pause for the cause internally and refocus before round 7 projects. And I think this is timely having you over here now instead of first of next year, obviously. And I would say we need to have some prayer sessions in the region's transportation officers as well as Cody. And you as well to lead the charge. Chris, and let's look over what we're doing. You know, I was thankful when we went through the round 6 changes. You know, we took a position, I came to Richmond, I think, and talked about it, or it was online, I don't know which. And, you know, we were all scared you were gonna make it more difficult. And I can remember hearing, well, you know, we'll look at these changes. If they don't work out, I heard conversation with 2 other people that we can go back and revisit them. But what I'm hearing you saying is we need to sharpen our data analytics and our vision of what we're trying to do, because you didn't take away the applications. We still got 4, I think, for each entity. I think 4 in Roanoke County, 4 in this location, 4 in TPO, 4 in the regional commission. So, okay, let's put 12 to 16 or whatever the number is, and we put in all those applications. But I'm hearing you is we didn't sharpen the tools and break it down into smaller parts for success. Now, we over here don't have a taxing authority, and we're probably not going to have one anytime soon or in the foreseeable future. So anything you can do to help us, because I noticed in some of the leveraged items, projects, it didn't really help us out too much neither. The other thing is, you know, we're more rural than we are, and congestion factor, you know, than we had. And that was one of the questions. I hope you can speak to that on one of our projects that I sent over to you was, it didn't give us very much benefit score contribution. So, yes, go ahead and proceed unless there's some more questions about the economic piece, but I'd like to circle back around to the land use piece as well. Anyone else have any questions before we go to the economic piece? Okay, thank you.
Okay, so first thing I wanted to check on, so I got several questions about economic development, how it's calculated, and I just want to make sure there's a base understanding of, so people know what goes into economic development scoring, so you know where to select sites. So now we made big changes. VEDP proposed it, led it. They are actually still our #1 resource, and they do the scoring. I do not do it. My team does not do it. But I can help you determine where to find good sites and how to do that. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to go to VEDP's website, and that's VEDP.org, and they have, right off the bat, they have a dashboard for these sites, and I think I linked it on the first slide, so hopefully this will be available digitally. But once you go to the VEDP site selection, and I think it's sites.vedp.org, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to hit this filter button, and you're going to filter to only sites and land. That is the only thing that is calculated in VEDP scoring. So you're going to filter to sites and land, and then you're going to zoom into an area. So I just zoomed into 581 and 81. And we had 3 sites that came up here for, one got clicked out of the selection. If it's a certified site, that's one of the scoring components, that's gonna have a check mark here. If you're curious what tiered site it is, then you're gonna go to the grant tracking dashboard. And you can click that link, this is the link in the actual presentation, and you just type in the name of the actual site. And it will tell you what BDRSP tiered site it is for BEDP. So many acronyms, stay with me. But it'll tell you what level of tiering that is. And then it will also tell you if it's had grant money allocated to it. So that's one of the other indicators. So the biggest components are sites. This 25 and 40 points come directly from the site itself, and I'll show you what makes up the score when you're actually looking at the site. But 65% of your total score is just related to that site itself. The next thing is whether or not it's received grant dollars, and it's literally a yes or a no, and you get 15 points. So you'll find that out in that grant dashboard when you go there. This number of sites in coordination with BDP, you will need to reach out to BDP for that information. They don't publish it, but they have to have been completed in coordination with BDP, so you would know probably if they had been there or not. And then again, that highest BDRSP tier you get from the grant tracking dashboard. So all of those are the components of what makes up the score. So this slide is about that 65% that I was talking about, that CapEx and the jobs score. And basically they use a historical projects model, and it's a tool, and it provides bulk estimates for announced jobs and capital expenditure expected from a property if it was developed. And so it's made by a linear regression model, but when it's doing those linear regression models, it mostly is considering the property size. 60% of that score is going to be related to your property size, and then the remaining of it is based on what the location is. It looks at surrounding terrain, sectors around. All this information is on census.gov. So you can kind of get a feel if there's universities, it's going to get a boost. If there's access to airports or port, it's going to get a boost in this area. But the majority of the score, you can tell the difference that right off the bat, I'm going to say that that's going to get a much better score than that, just by knowing that property size. And it's a certified site. So this is your best scoring site out of all of these. And so those are the components that make up BEDP scoring, and I think people think it's a veil, and it is a linear regression model, but the data that goes into it is pretty obvious, and you can find those pieces and components that are with it. Lastly, I will say I get questions all the time that people are seeing that my site's not reflected. Please do reach out to Michelle Mendy at BEDP if you believe you have a site that should be reflected in here. And make sure that it's done before August at the end of the submission round, because you do a snapshot on August 1 and the data is used that's in there on August 1. But that is how you get those sites in here now. Does that kind of answer the questions on BEDP's process? Did anyone?
Thank you. That was, I didn't know about this.
That's how we get that score. You're welcome. So the next one is, this was a little bit in the weeds, and I think that it was from Phil about the pedestrian category. What question that is? Okay, so the question was, the combination of increased project costs and the change to land use criteria resulted in low score for projects that involve pedestrian improvements, even in high density areas where lots of pedestrians are present with no existing accommodation. Can these factors be adjusted so the value of pedestrian improvements is better reflected? So what I wanted to talk about here is that pedestrian improvement use performance-based planning too. And I think that gets lost in the mix. Absolutely, there are still bike and ped projects being funded in Smart Scale. And a lot of that is because now it is strictly performance-based. If there are safety issues, bike and ped and pedestrians are getting injured, that will come up in the performance metrics. And then we also do give it a throughput score. So there is a good way for you to be able to check if it will get a throughput score related to those pedestrians. So performance-based planning works for pedestrian projects, and I think that it gets overlooked because land use used to outshine the performances. And so I just want to reiterate that performance-based planning goes for every single measure, and it's not just highway measures. And I kind of show here how to actually calculate how we get to the number of persons that would be using the bike and ped process. Any other questions that I have, that you have for me? Some of these I will respond to in email, but if you have other questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay, this is the time. If you have any questions, even if you think it might have been addressed, but you want clarity, it's the time to do it.
Besides the training that occurs at the round opening. And I know we have resources by going online. Is there any other information currently online that gives the same kind of information, but maybe more detailed than what you've given to us? That if we have people that we feel like need to start educating themselves on this, that we can send them to a site? Is there anything like that right now?
So you have this presentation. I will say I made a presentation. There isn't anything that is this presentation on our website
Okay,
today. So you have, hopefully you have this and it can be distributed.
we've talked about that, and it will be.
So this can be distributed. I will say I did a similar presentation for FAMPO. And I'm happy to post that to the website. And I went into further detail and I did an example project and how to calculate it.
That would be awesome. That's exactly what I'm asking about.
Happy to put that online. And then the second thing I will say is we are doing a presentation next month for the CTV. That will be a little bit like this.
TTC?
With CTV.
CTV.
Yeah, so the plan is to be in front of the CTV in July, giving them a download of how we saw the policy and improvement work in round 6. So it'll be this with a little bit more of individual by policy information. And we hope to point future presentation requests to that. So
Right.
I will put the FAMPO presentation online. I will put this presentation online and send out a portal blast to our applicants.
And I think whatever training, whenever it can be recorded and posted online for reference for the different communities, that would be greatly helpful.
That would be appreciated, yeah, Ms. Brett.
Yeah. I've got a question, Brooke, on land use criteria. So the combination of project costs and the change to that criteria has resulted in low scores to the projects that involve pedestrian improvements, even in high density areas where there's lots of pedestrians present with no existing accommodations. Can those factors be adjusted so the value of pedestrian improvements is better reflected?
So, what factors are you asking to adjust? Because I'm not sure, because there is something we call a pedestrian factor when we do scoring. There's measures, there's factor weighting, there's area type weighting, there's a lot of components. So I don't know what the question is. I need further clarification.
I have to ask my staff person, Megan, down there to.
And I'm going to bounce it to our expert, Nathan.
Okay.
Where is Nathan?
Kind of looking at the accessibility.
We can't see.
Accessibility bumped up to show that we put it here, it'll benefit or the other factors.
So the clarification question then becomes, so are you fundamentally asking if these values can change?
Or just the way that they're split.
So you're talking about.
Yeah.
So actually, when we get down to making it, so what is the request?
To give more benefits or to pedestrian improvement, because often they were funded because they scored well in land use. And I believe that the one that we applied for was in V-Trans, at the V-Trans needs for pedestrian improvements. And it was in a very high density area, yet the accessibility factor and that was really the only one that would okay, and it did register in there, but I just was wondering if there was any way to kind of bump that.
So what I would say to this is kind of where I get started with the presentation. Just because it's a midterm need, doesn't mean it's a prioritized need. And I really want to reiterate that performance-based planning is important for PED projects. Density isn't the only thing. So you have to have some safety data there, like pad safety incident. So you're picking your locations, not just because it's a dense location. That is how we get the denseness, congestion factors is how we would probably give you your congestion score. But you're gonna wanna have a congestion and a safety score to be successful. So performance-based planning still works in bike and head. Every bike and head project that I saw that was funded had a score in every category. So I think that you're under the veil that land use was funding, but land use was funding anything that was small, period. It happened to be that some bike and head projects were small. Land use was just funding anything that was less than $2 million, period, even if it didn't bring value to the state. Now, performance-based planning is the bar. You need to look and make sure that there are other data factors in play. You will get some environmental score, especially if you're getting that throughput. I would like to request that you tell me which exact projects you're using as an example, and then we can talk about that a little bit more so I can further understand, just to make sure that I'm understanding the question correctly. But I just want to reiterate that performance-based planning and what we covered here will work for bike and head projects, and you should use that in your selection.
Which one were you talking about? Nathan, do you have an example?
With Starkey.
But say,
Starkey and Ogden Road, that's been odd, I think.
okay,
I don't think there were any pedestrians, or state highways in the urban and everything.
That's pretty good, false.
Right.
so that's gonna be the reason, right, off the bat, is that it doesn't have any performance indicators. So just focusing on where those performance indicators are will automatically boost those bike and head projects.
But, someone have a question over this side?
Let's do it.
Question over here. Here's one for you that came up after, like, sent some over earlier this week to Renee. And I don't know where this came from, but I can remember one time talking to Wayne Strickland about this very thing. Is it possible to create separate funding pools for districts so they don't compete against larger districts like Salem competing against Richmond, H-TAC, and Northern Virginia? That's one I haven't heard before.
That's confusing because it is separate pots,
Yeah.
so.
Oh, no, I meant like putting the dollars, in different parts of the state, and then you just compete against those dollars.
About putting dollars in it.
Yeah.
So we're talking about taking the $64.3 million and breaking that up within Salem, is that?
I guess that's what the question was, yes.
I would put the request in.
I mean, I don't know, I'm just.
Yeah, we're considering.
I don't know.
So
That's a legislative.
By
question.
law, yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Well,
Legislative change.
Yep,
So that would require General Assembly.
General Assembly.
Approval in order to do something like that.
and someone with knowledge of this, like Delegate Austin, might be the person you want to talk to.
Yeah.
Because he knows so much about transportation. Well, it was just something that I picked up after sent in to you folks, so.
And there's also other things to consider about their supplemental grant that's getting added in to the TGP, and it is truly written in law, so thank you for adding that.
And I just want to say this, I've been around about 8 years now, so that takes us from about round 2 or 3. And we've had some good successes and some good projects, and Dr. Smoot can attest to some of those larger ones, like over there at Tanglewood Mall 220 corridor, and the diverging diamond is going to be put in over there. That's supposed to help fluidity and safety, and that was a regional wide supported project. And we were able to get funding for that, and the project's starting now. So we want you to know, we thank you for, the system. I think it's a great system. I just think that we, having gone over 5 on HPPs in Salem, and really, 3 for whatever the projects were, 20. I mean, we're like a baseball team. We're in the cellar we're in the last place. I don't want to buy tickets to see a last place team. I want to see a 500 or above team that wins, so you enjoy the game. So we need to take away from some of this, some of the tools you recommended and regroup and see if we can't go back in a stronger position and get more success going forward. Before we go on, does anyone else have any questions at this time? If not, Dr. Stute, do you have any comments you'd like to make or Renee?
I will do this briefly.
Yes, sir.
I know everyone's got other things to do, but I do want to thank, Brooke for coming today, visiting with us. And, John, you joining us, Richmond. There's 2 or 3 thoughts about smart scale process. Smart scale process is a creature of the General Assembly. Started, I don't know, 12, 14 years ago, trying to bring a more metric focused approach to the allocation of construction, highway construction primarily, also some mass transit funding, but bring what was essentially a political process to something that was more based on metrics, reflecting needs, getting the biggest bang for your buck, which has been taking place. It has been revised, each of the now 6 rounds. It was revised significantly, 6th round, the one we're in now. 7th round will probably start January or so next year. And we need to be prepared to tee up anything we want to consider for changes in the process for the 7th round. Now here's the thought I've been kicking around a little bit, right around on the tractor or something, spotting that happens. By the loose cigars, fix that problem. You know, if smart scale is a process that's designed to allocate money to the areas of greatest projects of greatest need, that may generally it is. How did it happen that one district, Richmond district, got in round numbers 2/3 of the money?
They have a specialist on board.
Now, do they have 2/3 of the need? Maybe they do.
They just know how to write it.
Do we have none of the need, which is what we got? I doubt that, but that is one conclusion, one could draw from this. The 3 other districts have got nothing as well. But looks a little strange. Now, I don't think there was anything nefarious going on here. There's nothing sinister going on. It's just the way the process worked out. Another conclusion you might draw would be that the metrics that are associated with the process do not reflect as well they could the needs of various districts.
Right.
In a small.
Another conclusion you could draw would be that any given district didn't do a very good job of using the metrics to pursue its needs. And there could be any combinations of these things going on in the way the system works. But you know, the smart scale at the state level is really 2 pots of money, as we have heard here today. One is the statewide pot. That's where we got nothing. The second is each district does get something in the district pot. And what each district gets is determined not on the merits of the projects. It's determined on a bunch of other things, which Ken can speak to much better than I can, but like, you know, the amount of roads you have in your district and populations and this, that, and the other. You can turn the crank and the numbers come out. Somewhat surprising to me. I don't know exactly why it happened. Maybe Brooke would. Was that the district pot this time around, in round 6, got over 2/3 of the money. And the statewide pot got about 1/3 of the money. Right? I mean, in round numbers.
Yeah.
And the money comes from the General Assembly, folks. They decide where, how much money is going to be available. And you probably noticed that in smart scale round 6, the total was, I don't know, 50–60% of what it was in round 5. It was considerably less. Now, I don't advise the legislature or anyone else on state finances, but I can tell you, my reading of the tea leaves, I hope I'm wrong, is we should expect to see less in the future, not more. Now, why do I say that? Because there's so many competing needs for state resources. And I made mention last time of that can that keeps getting kicked down the road by administrations of all stripes, that we keep building more and more roads and highways in Virginia, and we're not increasing the maintenance money. And folks, that's going to hit the wall out there sooner than later. And that, the legislation will come up with the solution to that, whatever that may be. But that's not going to provide more funding for building additional roads and meeting other transportation needs. It's going to be focused on taking care of what we have. And that day is coming. So those are just some of the things, in the back of my head as I think about smart scale. I think this has been a very good discussion today. We do have some work to do as we approach round 7 to understand how we can be more effective and how the system can be more effective in recognizing the needs that various districts have. Thank you for the opportunity today.
Thank you, Dr. There's just one hanging question. You all got a computer down there that's larger than this room that runs all the algorithms and all the metrics to do the scoring. You're shaking your head no, but someone told me
Like that.
it's not like that. Well, it's a pretty big building you got down there. But anyhow, and I'm sure you got a good computer system, but if you took all these projects in the Salem district, or you took all the projects in the state and ran them through round 5's criteria, I wonder what the results would look like then for the Salem district. That's a hanging question. You got a comment, fine, but if you don't, I understand. Because we were the last place Marlins and Nationals in the National League East, if you will, for baseball comparison.
So I'll chime in 2 things, just to add on to Dr. Smoot's comment about the pot difference size.
Yeah.
So the supplemental gas tax and the supplemental grant gets added to the DGP. It used to be in the beginning of Smart Scale that these numbers were exactly equal, that HPP and DGP was equal. But in 2020, during the omnibus tax bill, they enacted another supplemental gas tax. And that money flows to CVTA. CVTA was created in that region. And then otherwise, if you're not in CVTA, not in MBTA, not in HR tax, and you're not on the 81 corridor. So the 81 corridor, any jurisdiction that touches the 81, their supplemental gas tax money goes right to 81. So everything else that's not those 4 things that I just mentioned, the extra money goes into DGP. So you're getting some of your 81 money's going to 81 and some of it's boosting up your Salem score. So I just want to clear that up of where that extra money is coming from. And that will continue to flow because that is statutory as well. So gas tax is statutory. So that's that. Second, wondering how y'all would have done under round 5 rules. We did run this and we ran it as a test before we came into this round to see what the difference would be, just to see on old projects. But I did take this round's projects and ran it on last round's rule. And unfortunately, the outcome was the same. And actually, Richmond District did better in last round.
Is that right?
That is correct. And you know why? Because round 3, or in round 5, step 3 just funds basically on benefit. And they have a $250 million request that was the highest benefit in the state, and it would have taken all the HPP money. Those old rules, but like I cannot stress enough that performance-based planning and prioritized needs is really all that you need to focus on. because last round goals would not have done better for you. And we see that through and through when we get little requests to change these factor areas.
Yeah,
It really doesn't matter. What matters is if you're picking a spot that has a serious need or a factors. So we play around with these numbers all the time internally. I have my staff look at, what if we boosted this up or we boosted this down, or, it doesn't move the needle that much. Where problems are and addressing solutions to those problems always wins. And that's the thing I can be proud of about Smart Scale. Sometimes I wasn't proud that land use was funding a lot of stuff before, and that's something we solved for in this new round and what we've been doing. But there is no question in my mind that we're working towards fixing problems. And like the secretary said, or the secretary said, we're not perfect, but I'm seeing that we're testing. We do our best to go back and look back behind the glass. We do a lot of testing during this time. We call this our lessons learned period. And we did run that, and it didn't change the outcome. A couple different projects got funded, but you got your 3 projects with just the district grant money using.
we appreciate that clarification. Because that does point us in the direction of performance review and being the next priority. Thank you very much. Once again, any last comments or questions?
The only thing that I would say
Yes.
before we go is I know Brooke gets questions sometimes about anticipating changes before the next round and how applicants can prepare for that. So I'll say from an OIPI standpoint, we are not intending to recommend any policy changes to the board. This is our first round after the marathon of review that Dr. Smoot took part of it, and that was a lot of hard work on a number of people's behalf. If, however, we do receive requests from the board, we will definitely do the analysis and present that. So I do want to say that obviously can change, but as of now, we're not anticipating from our position recommending any policy changes. We'd like to see how the next round comes out and then, take another hard look and see if there's anything that needs to be proposed. So any suggestions that you all may have, feel free to share it with us. They're right here. Dr. Smoot, he and I have chatted about this already, but we're really taking direction from the board for next round.
Thank you. Great presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hey, by the way, we'd like to have a copy of that by tomorrow so we can get it out to everybody that's on the board here.
Jeremy has it.
I will send this out later today after the commission meeting to the policy board, so you'll have this presentation before the end of the day.
Thank you all very much. Have a safe trip back to Richmond.
Thank you.
Take care.
Okay. All right, moving on to agenda item 6. Item Amendment 5 to the 2045 Roanoke Valley Transportation Plan, page 20 of your agenda packet. Recognize Allison. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll be very brief. So this item is the amendment to the 2045 RVTP. And so this is the first viewing for you all of this information. The TTC saw this earlier this month. What we did is look at the draft 6-year improvement program and pull these new projects off to be incorporated into the long range plan. So we've already received some feedback from localities on projects that do not need to be included. So before we have public comment, which will be in July, we will make sure that all of these projects and numbers are correct now since the 6-year improvement program was approved. So your localities will be hearing from me just to confirm before you move forward on public engagement. So that's just the information, and then we'll have action hopefully by August.
Okay, there's no action we need to take on this.
Yep.
But any questions? Members? She just finished.
No question. Okay,
Okay, great.
let's go on to item number 8. amendment number 5 to the FY 24 through 27 Transportation Improvement Plan, page 21.
Okay, so this is the first read of amendment number 5 to the TIP. So we got notice from Salem District VDOT folks to let us know that one of the projects west of the 81, 137 to 128 project that is going to be ungrouped. The Census project is currently grouped. Almost all of the projects are grouped. There was some environmental work that sort of, brought them over the threshold to make the project be ungrouped. So that's the information that we have right now. Hopefully we'll be able to work with our VDOT staff and central office to be able to get us information before going for public comment. But this is the information. I just pulled this graphic because that is the project that was referenced, whether or not as general area. So just to put some sort of context at this point. So do you have any questions?
Any questions on that topic? Okay. Thank you very much, Allison.
Thank you.
Moving on to item 9, other business. Is there any other business to come before the TPO this afternoon?
Stewart.
Thank you. So, and one, I want to thank all of our partners that helped promote this, but earlier this week, we rolled out a new branding and logo. First time it's been updated in over 30 years. And really, it's it's fairly simple. Everybody recognizes the R when they think about the airport. I've been reminded of the National Association of Realtors ever since I got here with it. So we've updated it a little bit and modernized it. But you'll also notice that we are now using the brand name of Roanoke-Blacksburg Airport instead of Roanoke-Blacksburg Regional Airport. The biggest thing there is I hope everybody understands we intend to always be a good regional partner and never will back away from that regional representation. But regional is not always a positive thing when you talk about an airport, a lot of the public's perception. So in addition to helping us streamline our branding a little bit when we go out and talk to the airlines and others, it also makes it a little easier. That's a mouthful when you try to say Roanoke-Blacksburg Regional Airport every time you turn around and want to do something. So just a little bit of updating, a little bit of refreshing, and this was a great time to do it because we had a lot of good stuff going on. We had a record year in pastors last year. We had the announcement of the new American Service Chicago starting in August. So there's a lot of positive things going. And oh, by the way, our website probably ran out of useful life about 10 years ago. We replaced it. Anytime you change your website, it's a great time to update your brand. So we appreciate everybody kind of helping us get that word out. And it's kind of gotten lost with a small announcement out in Bogota a couple of days ago. But we do appreciate all your support.
Yeah, timing's something else,
It always is.
It's a big element.
Sometimes it's a good thing.
Sometimes that big element takes all the coverage, Now I gotta get used to saying Roanoke-Blacksburg Airport and not Roanoke-Blacksburg Regional Airport, because I think that's been ingrained.
And the important thing is that the official name of the airport is not changing. We're not messing with FAA and the state to try to change the name.
Oh, yeah.
It's just a branding.
Is that branding? Yeah, I got you. So it's okay for me to say
You
Roanoke-Blacksburg.
slip, we won't say.
No, when I address anybody, or when Mr. Radford does the state of the county, it's okay to say Roanoke-Blacksburg Airport. That's not gonna make anybody mad, right?
But and even to use it more of the commission is still Roanoke Regional Airport Commission, so we can't change that.
I understand.
That state.
Just the branding. That's cool. Appreciate that.
Really like it.
Hey, any questions about that? Oh, you have another suggestion for the name, okay.
No. Where's the swag?
I ain't got any.
No.
I went to the.
I need a baseball
I
cap,
went to the Google and everything the other day. And
Yeah,
I said, "Well,
you need
I
swag."
don't
Yeah.
have anything, so.
He needs swag. I like some swag.
I didn't
Got any
get
pen?
swag.
I'll buy it from you, just tell me where to go.
Okay, swag takes time.
Well, if it does.
All right, thank you very much for that update on the Roanoke-Blacksburg Airport. Number 10 on our agenda, if there's no other business to come before the commission. Number 10 is comment period by RVTPO policy board members and of the public. And Megan's gonna be upset if I don't call attention to first announcement.
Thank you very much, Mr. North. Everybody should have flyers. They're seen for the East Roanoke River Greenway feasibility study round 2 community meetings. We've gone from 9 alignments down to 3. We would love your feedback on those alignments. The map and survey is available online. There will be more information at the community meetings on July 9th in Benton and 10th at Explore Park. Open houses, please come join us. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, this meeting is going to look at what, 3 routes?
Yes.
And then we're gonna take input on that and go on to the next.
Through August 1st.
Right. Now, this is gonna be expensive probably, and this is probably gonna be one that if it's real expensive, it won't be going through Smart Scale to get funding. We'll probably have to get somebody to knock on the door in Richmond and say, hey, we need some money. But anyway, we're keeping on trying because the last mile is the longest mile. And I think that's what this is here. We spent a lot of time trying to make this happen, and it's not gonna happen overnight, but this is a big step. So you got an opinion. Now's the time to voice it at the meetings on July 9th and 10th. Thanks, Megan.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Just want to share real quickly, as up on the board, we got a reminder that there will be some public meetings on the Craig Bonnetot Trail. We'll be sharing this with the Regional Commission as well on July 15th and 16th. I'm sure if you want more information, we're happy to forward you the email that we received, but just for those who are interested in that project. So it is outside the TPO area, but it contributes to the general trails and outdoor recreation economy. So I just want to share that with you this afternoon. Thank you.
I appreciate that. And any more comments from anyone? Yes, Mr.
Yeah, I was actually going to mention those two. The 15th is at Eagle Rock. The 16th is at Craig County High School. And so that's each end of the trail. It's pretty long, 2 different counties. So we did have 2 meetings. The day before, I think Chairman North, you'll be at the I-81 Advisory Committee. Is that right?
That's right.
That been set?
And July the 14th.
14th.
At the
Yes,
Blue
sir.
Ridge Community College up 81
Right.
at 3 o'clock.
And then if you haven't had a full dose, because you see, we went the 9th and 10th with this transportation endeavor with the county, then we go 14, 15, 16. For those diehards, on the 17th, we'll have a meeting about the I-81 next round of consideration of project needs. So that'll be at the Salem Civic Center on Thursday, the 17th between 5 and 7, I believe. Check the times, but I think it's 5 and 7. But that is that week of the 14th through 17th is a full week of transportation excitement. So
You got that.
kind of a March Madness, evidently.
That's right. Thank you, Ken. Appreciate
Yes,
that
sir.
reminder. Yes.
The Roanoke Valley Greenway Commission, last updated their plan in 2018, and there's copies here for you if you'd like to have a copy.
Very good. Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman, I'll just also point out another press release that was kind of overlooked in the news yesterday. But yesterday morning, Virginia Tech had a press release out, the Virginia Advanced Air Mobility Smart Airspace Program, which is a university-led initiative, which is going to be developing low-level flight approach and traffic patterns for basically in the future unmanned vertical takeoff aircraft. The airport is proud to be part of that project and supporting Virginia Tech and the state effort. Don't want anybody getting alarmed that we're gonna have unmanned vertical aircraft taking off out of Blacksburg into the faster traffic patterns, but this will go in and study. We'll set up a site for a vertiport on the airport. Roanoke Blacksburg will be the only commercial airport that is part of that program right now. So it's set up basically it's that flight program or flight patterns from the research area over at Tech, Smart Road, on airport at Roanoke Blacksburg, and then down to Blackstone, which is the only FAA approved vertiport site in the country right now, or in the state. So it's there's a lot of things that this type of aircraft will have that can advance us, for instance, an unmanned air taxi between Tech and Roanoke at some point. A lot of other purposes it can be, but it can really change kind of the face of transportation in the world, not just here. But we're proud to be part of that and proud of Tech and the Department of Aviation to take the lead on it.
Thanks for that.
Was that at Fort Pickett or is it at?
It's it's Blackstone, it's down, what is that, southeast, I guess, of Fredericksburg in that area.
Right, well, yeah, I was just curious if it was on the National Guard runs, well, it hasn't transitioned back to Fort Pickett, but.
That's
The
where I
airfield,
think-
the airfield
That's
is,
where I think it is.
is that,
Yeah.
so,
I've only heard it called Blackstone. I
Right.
think that is the airport.
Hey, we've got something going on in Roanoke County last week. We had a drone show out there at Green Ridge Park. I'm sure the drones were in safe height from the airplane.
We're being invaded
Yeah.
or say.
We were invading safe. Yes,
Mr. Chairman, since I represent the DPO on the Greenway Commission and following up on Barbara's comment on something that's current. I can't go into much detail on this, but I will say that the commission at its annual meeting yesterday authorized our leadership transition committee to enter into discussions and negotiations with the regional commission about becoming our fiscal agent. And so we move forward with that. Obviously, that's not something not unilateral, so I don't have any more to report on anything.
have more news as things move along. Thank you for bringing that up. That was a good point there. Anyone else? Yes, Peter.
motion to adjourn.
We're not there yet. Not there yet.
Second.
I just want to say, we've heard a lot today. Let's look at the presentation that comes out. If you have more questions, you can always communicate through Chris. That can get them to the folks here today, Ronique and Brooke. But you heard that if they'd have run this through the round 5 criteria before changes were made for round 6 and the metrics, wouldn't have made that much difference. You heard they're probably not going to advocate for any changes in this next round unless a board member or the board, the Commonwealth Transportation Board votes to look at changes, which could happen. I mean, they've got a meeting next month. And we learned in the meantime, while we wait on that process to work its way out, that we need to educate ourselves even more. And I think, Chris, and you can take the lead on that, you and Jeremy, to look at these tools that will help us submit projects that we think might have a better chance of getting funded next time. And I think that's all we can do. And you heard Dr. Smoot say for the second time that the pot doesn't probably look like it's going to get much bigger. We never know. And I'll tell you this for the last point. The last time we had a transportation leader in Virginia was a governor, and I think his name was Belials. And he called in the House Speaker and he called in the Senate Majority leaders and leaders. And he said to them, "What do you want? What do you want? And what do you want?" And they all told him what they would like to see over the next 4 years. And then he said to them, "Sounds reasonable. I can support those things if you'll support my bill on transportation." And things happened back in Virginia at that time. And, you know, we always could use more money for transportation. But what we got to remember, while we may not get the small projects, we've gotten something through here on 81. That's 3-lane roads. So the Salem area and the 81 corridor have gotten a whole lot of money that we wouldn't have gotten had that initiative not been kicked off. And, you know, Delegate Austin from Botetourt has been a great spokesman for that area. So let's just keep on being positive while we wait to see what happens in Richmond at the CTP, because Northern Virginia was very upset about the changes. They didn't fare well. As she mentioned, 4 planning districts did not fare well. And you heard about Richmond and Hampton Roads, they did the best. So things could change, but in the meantime, let's go ahead and take this great advice we've heard today and see what we can take out of it. And let's work as hard as we always have in the past. And maybe we'll get some projects downstream in round 7. Let's just pray that works out. So with that said, I will now entertain a motion for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We stand adjourned. Thank you. That's gonna be your new job. Good job. Thank you. Like Billy Martin.
Yeah. You're a link to phone.